Okay, it is right on noon, and I'll go ahead and it's my pleasure to call to order the Community Development Commission of Albany, Oregon on Monday, January 22nd, 2024. Staff, would you conduct the roll call, please?
Commissioner Stubbs. Commissioner Johnson II.
Here.
Commissioner Tim.
Here.
Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Chair Davis.
Present.
Commissioner Brady.
Present.
Commissioner Robledo. And Commissioner Dean.
Present.
Okay. Our first order of agenda is to approve the minutes from December 18th meeting, December 18th, 2023. Could I have a motion to approve those meetings, or if there's any suggested comments or changes?
I would move that we approve the minutes as printed.
I second.
All those in favor of approval? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. And with that, we'll start with staff's scheduled business.
Can I ask
Come on up.
Can I ask a quick question first? How much money are we talking about allocating? What, do you have that figure?
I meant to have that ready to go, and I will pull that up. I'm going to let him present first, and I'm going to work.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you, everyone, for obviously allowing us to apply for another community development block grant for the Boys and Girls Club of Albany. As you are probably aware, the role that the Boys and Girls Club and multiple nonprofits play just in the framework of serving youth in our community is one that can't be overstated and how important it is. We are applying for some assistance with our summer program specifically. We, like all nonprofits, had went through some changes in the last few years, and our summer program had kind of held strong through everything pandemic wise and being able to serve kids in the community. Part of our ask with the community development block grant here is, and the biggest part of it for us, is being able to provide scholarships to kids that can't afford to come to the Boys and Girls Club during the summer. If you're not super familiar with the program, during the school year, it is $25 a year for kids to come to the club every day after school. And that is essentially 4.5 hours of care and food and everything over the course of the school year. During the summer, there is a weekly fee that they pay. It starts at $75. And if they qualify for free and reduced lunch, working with the school district's fee structure, the community development block grant through the city of Albany has helped us be able to reduce that down to $50 per family. So essentially they're paying $10 a day to come to the club. That provides them breakfast. It provides them lunch and a snack. And that has nothing to do with the enrichment activities and learning loss and everything that they're getting when they come to the club. Our summer program is set up with a curriculum that includes summer learning loss stuff through a brain gain program, like character development stuff through a new program that we're doing that's called Positive Actions, which is really cool. It just helps with dealing with social and emotional issues and everything that comes up. So that's going to be run. It's being run currently through our school year program. It's going to continue to be run in summertime. And then also it's summer. We want the kids to have fun, right? They need to be out in the community doing stuff. They need to be interacting with others. So there's field trips every week that are planned into it. There is really no free time in our summer program. Like, it's structured from one activity to the next to make sure that they're getting some exercise every day. They're getting that learning loss every day. They're getting the social, emotional, like, interaction with each other. So this grant really does help us to be able to let families that can't afford to come to the club be able to be there, and us to be able to, like, supplement some of the staffing costs and everything that it really does take to keep a nonprofit open. Last year, we were seeing about 180 a day in our summer program. Our membership last year for our school year program was about 220. This year, we've doubled that. Part of it is we've been able to hire more staff. That has got a lot better over the course of the last few months. So we're just able to take more kids into the building and kind of get back closer to where we were pre-pandemic numbers. We're not there, but we're getting closer. So we expect summertime to grow a little bit more. So it's important for this funding to be able to kind of help us do that. So I am open to any questions. It's my first time presenting, so if you guys have things that you want to know, please fire them out at me.
Apologize for that. I thought I turned it
You're
off.
good.
I do.
I've got a question for you. On the budget summary, you've got a little over 32,000 from the state. It says amount tentative. Why is that tentative? What's happening?
Let me pull my thing up. There shouldn't be part of this is with our financial department too, and she was on vacation today, so I didn't get a chance to ask a ton of clarifying questions. The 33,000 that was written in there that is outside of the 17 that is written for scholarships, as far as I am aware and working with them, was just kind of a tentative number to be able to help supplement some of the mentorship and staffing stuff that goes on with the kids, to be able to help provide the care that's needed to them. And it's not just like the 17,000 that was an ask was for direct scholarship money to go to the members to help them. And then the rest of it was just to kind of be able to supplement the ability to bring a couple more staff on as we're expecting growth for the summer. So
if you don't get to 32,000, what happens to the project?
I mean, the project will still go on. We're still going to run summer program. The most important part for us is being able to serve kids. So we will just have to dig into a couple other opportunities that we may have, or into our budget, do some extra fundraising, apply for a few more grants, maybe to be able to supplement that kind of that portion of what we're asking for here.
A question about the number of kids served. So you gave some numbers when you were talking, like 180 and 200 some, and then in your application you list 135 kids served. How do those numbers?
Yeah, so the 180 that we were seeing per week is all kids, because we're not just taking the low to medium income kids. 135 is the number that we're applying for to help with scholarships for. So anything over the 135 from last year, and I'm referencing the 180 number as kind of an average, that is kids that don't necessarily qualify for free and reduced lunch. So their families are paying the full $75 that we're asking for them to over the course of summertime.
Does your organization provide the economic impact per family sort of figure that having a kid in a program can provide? Either not an economic, I know there's more than just economic, there's a social and whole aspect as well, but it must have some economic play too.
Yeah, we would have to break down like fully into how much it does help families to be only paying essentially $10 a day to come, compared to other daycare programs or other things that are going on. I don't know those figures off the top of my head. I do know for us, just breaking down like how much it costs to have a kid in our program, we are estimating for summertime is just shy of $1,000 per member to have them enrolled, when it comes to our cost to pay for their food, our cost to pay for staffing, our cost to pay for facility and that kind of stuff. So if they're not qualifying for free and reduced lunch, basically they're at $750 for the summer if they're going to attend every week. And if they are qualifying, it's about half of what it actually cost us. And then obviously with our school year numbers only charging them $25 for the whole school year, then it, you know, that's what we do fundraising for, and that's what we write grants and stuff for. So.
Yeah, I had a question. Well, first of all, thank you for explaining the acronyms that you use. I know you guys use them all the time, and so you're used to it, but that helps. And then I wondered, who you accept is basically first come, first served. I mean, there's no choosing like an ethnicity over another one or anything like that?
No, we're first come, first serve when it comes to just who signs up. However, we have no wait list currently. We have the last couple of years. We had some major staffing issues, kind of like everybody did, being able to provide enough people to, you know, keep our 1-to-20 ratio with kids. We are in a much better spot now. I highly, highly would doubt that we would have wait lists during the summertime. I would anticipate any kid that wants to sign up for summer program.
And that, when you say 1,000 per child, is that for the summer?
That's for the summer, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if it was per month or just for summer.
Yeah, that's basically for the last week in June through the end of August.
For summer. All right, great. I mean, it's a great program. We heard about it last year, and just to keep those little kiddies busy.
Yeah.
That's good.
Keep them active. And I mean, we're open 8:30 to 5:30, so it's giving them 9 hours of care, allowing parents to drop them off before they go to work, pick them up after they come back from work, and make sure they're fed and make sure they're supervised. And there's activities planned for them, and they're not just sitting watching TV. So
Yeah, and with the daycare issue that we have, it's a great service. So thank you
yeah,
very much.
absolutely. Perfect. Thank
One
you
more
all.
question.
Yeah.
Do you self audit for diversity, equity, inclusion amongst your both your staff and your
Yeah,
your
when we run our annual report, which I'm actually right in the middle of now. It's the first time that I've went through it, so I've had some other roles with the organization, but we're going through it currently. When we turn in our annual report to like Boys and Girls Clubs of America, we go through all the demographics of like family income, ethnicity, single family homes, all that kind of stuff. It gets run in one huge report that I'm in the middle of working on right now, so I'm learning a lot about it as we go. But it's all stuff that is put into place that lets us then get feedback and be able to show like where we really need to put our resources and how we can help the community out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions?
I think we'll move it forward to the next presenter, just in the interest of
Yeah.
time. Thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Thank you.
Could I get the name of the gentleman?
Scott Withers.
Scott? Okay, thank you.
So next I'll have Carol Davies with Creating Housing Coalition come up, but I wanted to first answer the question. Come on up. So this year we've had a total requested of $175,791 of public service funds, and a request for a total of $289,754 in our non-public service funding. So the grand total was $465,545 requested.
Thank you.
Basically 466.
And we do not yet know what our total allocation will be, but typically based on previous years for public service funding, we anticipate having around $50,000 to be able to grant.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it over to you, Kara.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my lateness. This is pit count week or point in time, so I am the Albany lead, and it's been a little bit on the crazy side. So again, I apologize for the lateness, but I am so excited to be able to talk to you about Community Outreach Assistance Program, or COAT, that's Creating Housing's outreach arm. And we, in the 2 years that we have been doing this, we have made a tremendous impact on the community. Last year, we served over 850 people, and that is unduplicated. So it's actual count of 850 people. We helped them with everything from basic needs, so hygiene supplies, camping supplies if they needed it, to referrals to different services, to that intensive peer support service that we provide, where we help people get off the street, go through all of the agencies. We kind of walk beside them as we are introducing them to the agencies. Once they get their needs met at certain agencies, then we follow them to the next agency, all the way into permanent housing. And then we do the case management continues with following them and making sure that they will be able to successfully stay in permanent housing. And that's a really big piece of what we do. Because a lot of people who have been on the street for a while are unable to, I think they're still in that fight or flight mode, and they're unable to move from the day-to-day things and look ahead and plan and be able to budget and things like that. So just being able to help them with all of those pieces until they're able to do it themselves is a really important piece of what we do. The other really critical thing that we provide is food. As I had mentioned in my report, we served 10,800 meals last year. And so that is a huge commitment, both to COAT and to the people that see us on a weekly basis. They come to expect the food, and it's really, it's a necessity, and we are always there to make sure that we provide the food for them. We also have been doing a lot with other agencies in the city. So on a weekly basis, we go out with somebody from Lynn County Drug and Alcohol. We go out with people from Lynn County Mental Health. We have somebody from OHSU coming, and this is really exciting because they're going to be doing Hep C vaccinations and testing. We have hosted the Samaritan van, so people can get health needs met. So we work a lot with different agencies in the city, and that's another really important piece, to kind of have that holistic approach to what we're doing. And I think my time is just about up. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, I do. First of all, where do you provide the food? Is there a base place?
No, we go out into the community.
Okay.
And yeah, we pack usually 2 vehicles full of food, and we serve out of the vehicles.
And then are the people that you're helping, are they from Albany?
The majority of them are from Albany.
Majority though, but not all.
I would say about 85% of them are from Albany. Yeah, and then there's a very, very small percentage, about 5%, that are outside of Lynn County. So a full 95% are people that are in Lynn County.
Yeah, because I've been asked and told, basically, you know, if you provide the services and get them what they need, people, I mean, they're, what do you want to call it? Their party line is really outspread. And so people find out about it. And so we just want to make sure that they're just not coming in to get the services when they're not here, because we want to help people here.
Yeah, and that was one thing that we were really surprised about when we started tracking that data. We thought that we would find a lot of people who were coming from Salem and outside of the area, but that's simply not the case. Even the people that we serve at the I-5 rest area, the majority of them are from Albany.
Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. I have an idea or suggestion, and Carol, and this is for you, but maybe we could look at how much time you and your staff spend serving the residents that you're helping get into housing, and then that way we can actually track those that are getting into housing in Albany, and also get the data that we need to do the tracking. I mean, because I'm sure that is a lot of the time that COAT and your staff work on. I didn't know if that was, if we looked at the application that way rather than buying this number of cans of food or whatever, if we looked at it on the service of trying to get people into housing, which is part of what COAT does, I think that would be a really good positive spin on what, the application, and ensuring that it meets the serving Albany residents and also meeting the CDBG requirements.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I can say that for myself, I handle most of the case management and the peer support, and I spend a good 80% of my day doing that case management piece. Heather, who is our lead peer support person, spends about 40% of her day doing that. So yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
My question is, how has the centralized city camping changed your mission? Is it change it for the better? For how has that worked for you?
So having Marvin's Garden makes it a little bit easier in some respects, because people aren't as spread out. We have a group of people who are in one area. However, the needs that these people at Marvin's Garden have are huge. They have a lot of barriers, and it's very difficult to get them into housing. And so we continue to do that case management piece with them. But as I said, it's really difficult without having other pieces in place, like having housing for people who have committed sex offenses or who have a lengthy criminal background or who have evictions on their record. So we can only help so much without those other pieces in place. So it does make our job more challenging in the long run.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for coming in today and presenting.
Thank you.
So now I will turn it over to Lauren Winchester with Jackson Street, and she is joining us online.
Hi, I'm Lauren. As Beth just said, I'm the grants manager at Jackson Street Youth Services, and am really excited to take a moment and share about our application with you all. Jackson Street works with youth ages 10 to 24, and our main vision is to end youth homelessness, which is fairly ambitious. So this application is certainly one piece of that larger goal and larger continuum. We do that with a continuum of care from outreach to emergency housing to longer term transitional housing focusing on employment and education. Full services are offered across that continuum: mental health interventions, physical health support, individual case management, every sort of piece that you would need to succeed and become safe and stable is offered at every step of the way as you want to engage with that. This specific funding request supports Albany House, which is our 24/7 shelter for minors age 10 to 17, which is set by our licensing requirements from the state. So it is a state licensed shelter. A lot of our funding for Albany House's programming goes to personnel. State licensing requires that we have a certain ratio of adults to youth in the house at any given time. So if we see drops in funding to support our staffing, we have to scale back the number of youth we can serve. So this will support us keeping all of our beds open at Albany House. And it's an effective measure. We've seen about 360 youth since we first opened this house in 2015. Many of them make safe exits, connect with positive adults in their community, which is a strong protective factor. Because if you have somebody you know that is safe and can help you meet your needs, you're less likely to have to turn to things like living on the street, living in a tent, living doubled up at your friend's house. They improve their grades, they stay in school, they graduate. It's a lot easier to find work if you have a diploma. And with those pieces in place, it's then easier to do things like find your first apartment. And we have served roughly 75 youth a year. COVID made that number weird, and then we renovated Albany House and then Corvallis House, so those numbers were lower. We do expect to serve more youth going forward now that we have a fully renovated shelter, a few more beds in that shelter, and hopefully less of a pandemic effect. We'll gladly take any questions you all have.
Any questions?
Yes, I've got one again. On the project budget, there's like 345,000 that's just tentative. What happens if you don't get that funding as pertains to this CDBG project?
Are you asking what happens if we don't get the CDBG funding?
Well, if you've got $345,000 that's tentative at the moment, if you don't get it, how does that affect the project in the sense that you need 30,000 for the CDBG? In other words, if you didn't get that money from those tentative sources, would you still be able to conduct the program that you need the 30,000 for from CDBG?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The tentative funding would definitely help us support a fuller expansion of that, but the $30,000 we could use either way. And in fact, if we didn't get that other $300,000, it would make it even more vital to have this support from the CDBG funds.
But you could still operate with the 30,000 from CDBG.
That's correct. We do have several multi-year federal and state grants right now that are secure. And so with that, plus the CDBG funds, we would be able to operate and have staff.
Okay, thanks.
No question. So this 30,000 is specifically for staffing?
Yeah.
And what role would that person be playing within the organization?
So we have kind of 4 main categories of staff. Traditionally, we've used this for our youth advocates. There are direct care workers and work one-on-one with the youth or with a group of youth, supervising really day-to-day activities, teaching youth how to set alarms and helping them make dinner in the evenings and making sure everybody's home and safe and able to go to bed. And then there is a case management sector. We work one-on-one with youth, and they have also been funded by this funding in the past. And then some admin, shelter manager, shelter assistant manager type roles. We have historically not used this funding for them, but could.
So follow up, you said 18, what was it? What's the age group, 15 to 24?
So Jackson Street as an organization serves 10 to 24-year-olds. This funding and Albany House serve 10 to 17-year-olds.
So you don't have 24-year-olds and commingling or cohabitating with 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds and like that?
Correct. No, they live in a separate space.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
So I had a quick question then. If the CDBG money doesn't come in, is the primary effect just fewer resources and fewer beds populated because of the ratio? It is on. Okay, so I'll get closer to it.
Yeah.
So if not all of the 30,000 comes in, is the primary impact that you just have fewer people and then fewer beds can be populated because you have to keep the fixed ratio, or is there anything else that's impacted?
That's the primary impact, correct? Is fewer youth served.
Yeah, Lauren, thank you for your presentation. As I said last time when we were working on these, deciding on these funds, that I think that this program is very worthwhile because when you're dealing with youth, they need the leg up where adults already have had most of the chances. And so I think this is an excellent thing to do, and I'm definitely in favor of the funding. I don't think I have any other questions other than I think the mayor asked my question too. I wanted to make sure that from 10 to 24, that's quite an age difference. But if they're in separate places, then I'm sure the program takes care of that. So thank you very much for what you do.
And I'm going to ask that we move on to the next presenter, but if you guys have additional questions for Lauren, just let me know and I can send her an email and follow up next meeting. So next I'll turn it over to Alicia Luck with Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Alicia Lucky and I oversee the Senior Companion Program at the Council of Governments. Our ask is specifically to support our Senior Companion Program, which places seniors 55 and older who are at 200% of the federal poverty level and matches them with homebound 65 and older City of Albany residents. We do a really good job because we're sponsored by the Council of Governments, which acts as the area agency on aging to make sure that that there are no other supports that these folks can use, that they truly need door-to-door service, help getting their groceries into their home, maybe can't navigate the bus system, don't qualify for other supports, can't afford to, pay for help aging in place. Most of our referrals come in-house from case managers who have already vetted the situation and say this is kind of last go for this person. And it keeps them at home, aging in place, and out of costly institutional care. You'll see we have a small ask, $4,000. It's about the same we ask for every year. That specifically helps support mileage and some staffing for within the city of Albany limits. We have addresses in place for both volunteers and the clients, so you can triple check that they are indeed city residents. Our volunteers use their own cars and are reimbursed at 40 cents a mile for taking folks to medical appointments, grocery store, even like the community center and other places where traditional transportation supports don't take folks. And this program during last week in the weather, my phone was blowing up. We run this program in Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties, and we really are helping the most vulnerable. And we have this lovely built-in support network of seniors helping seniors in their own neighborhood. They know their ebb and flow. They know that if they have like a wood stove that they can use during a power outage, and it's just a very cool program. I'll also note that 100% of our participants are presumed benefit clientele. All of our volunteers have to be 55 or older, but our current core is all 65 and older, which meets that 62 age. And also all of our clients per federal regulation have to be 65 and older. 80% of the crew, because of the federal regulations, are also extremely low income. And typically they come to us, we do income renewals every year, and their only income is Social Security. So this program falls right in line with the federal grant that I manage. A lot of red tape, a lot of bells and whistles, but we're already doing income checks, address verification, and this has been a really good match for us. Let me know if you have any questions. Real quick, before you ask about tentative funds, those are just grants, local grants on my plate that the applications aren't even due yet for fiscal year 25. So I'm anticipating asking about 6,000, but the federal grant is secure.
Questions from the commission? Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Guys.
Thank you, Alicia.
All right, so last but certainly not least, we have Chris Reese with the YMCA.
Good afternoon, Chris Reese, at Willamette Family YMCA CEO. We're asking for $50,200 to cover the majority of the cost for the teacher at our Early Learning Child Development Center. This teacher will be Spanish-speaking, will help to accommodate Spanish-speaking families in all classrooms as needed. These funds will allow us to open up a classroom or expand service in an existing classroom for up to 10 kids without having to be concerned about breaking even, which is that 1-to-10 ratio. This will keep our kids off the wait list and put them into a classroom immediately upon enrollment. We're looking to expand our license to 2- to 5-year-olds as well, currently serving 3- to 5. 40% of our student families currently receive the employee-related daycare funds, and we expect a similar ratio for the new classroom. This is for our low to moderate income families. Spanish-speaking teachers already identified and will be covered by these funds to open up the 10 spots mentioned. Growing leaders is what we call it, can serve up to 71 children currently. So where we're super robust in our after-school market in partnership with Boys and Girls Club, we found our niche to be the preschool market. That Early Learning Child Development Center, if you're not educated in that, it's about a 70% increase in academics for those folks that would have never had a chance in 3rd grade. Their academic averages are 70% higher than those that had a better education in that Early Learning Child Development Center arena. So I've taken that very seriously in my 4.5 years as a CEO of the YMCA. I've opened up 2 preschools. We're now in negotiations with the city for taking over Maple Lawn, because we feel like there's also a niche there where our families with children with special needs are not being taken care of. So if before that closes down, we'd like to take that on as well. We've already partnered with Greater Albany Public Schools to bring children with special needs into our facilities. We don't charge gaps for anything that we do at the YMCA, whether it be sports or classroom settings or whatever, we have a partnership with Greater Albany Public Schools to take on that onus in our community. So it's super important for us to meet the demographics that we have here in our community, and Spanish speaking folks are not getting that need met. We can't afford to have a Spanish speaking teacher without the help of grants. We're not yet a big donor charity of choice yet, but it's coming. We're working towards that. So we rely heavily on grants. Everybody thinks all the fields that we built and everything, that we all this money, but I wrote grants to get that done, not donations. So the best part about our deal at the YMCA is the partnerships. Boys and Girls Club and us are tied at the hip now. A super amazing relationship, all about doing the right thing by our community. So we stay out of each other's niches and make sure we're taking care of the community. So that's why we focused on preschool and now getting into that infant toddler care at affordable rates. So subject to your questions.
I had a question. So
Sure.
you mentioned that the funding for this is going for that specific individual, right? And then
Correct.
there was a comment in there about how the money won't be needed on an ongoing basis because it'll become self-funding. Can you comment on how that works?
You bet. So initially, we don't have all those families even coming our way because the families aren't getting the attention of a Spanish-speaking teacher to understand how to even get there. So we're trying to get that gap crossed and cover that delta of just getting the education out there. Hey, you can come here. We have a Spanish-speaking teacher, and your young child now we can actually collaborate with that family because they only speak Spanish. So we feel like that niche will be covered with a Spanish-speaking teacher. And once we get 10 to 20 children coming in that only speak Spanish from those families, now that'll cover our teacher in the future. That's our goal, right? But right now we have three families, I believe, that they only speak Spanish. And so luckily we have a Spanish-speaking teacher, but it's not paying for itself. So I'm losing money, but I'm not going to turn them down. So I will try to make it up. It's like the swimming pool, right? Swimming pools lose money. Got to have swimming pools or people drown. We have to teach swimming to our kiddos. So we're going to do the right thing. We'll make it up other ways. In our 6-year model, the year 25 in my 6-year, I preach this a lot, but relevance, communication, collaboration, build, grow, and self-sustain. So in my year 6 of being a CEO, my plan is to be self-sustainable. So this blends in with the model of self-sustainability, that once we have enough children from our Spanish-speaking community, then that will be self-sustainable.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes, so Chris,
Ma'am.
will this teacher be, or this person be teaching English to the Spanish?
Yes, ma'am. That's the goal. Initially, right now, we're just getting our feet wet, but that is the goal. But I also want to even go beyond that. I would like to also flip the script and go teaching Spanish to our English-speaking children at the younger years. Because as I said, those first 7 years of life, that love of learning is established in those first 7 years. And if we can do flip the script and do both, that is our eventual goal. But right now, that is the number one goal, is just to make sure that not just the translation between parent and teacher, but also helping those children learn English.
Yeah, because to me, that'd be the goal, is to have them learn English so that you didn't have to have the dual
Yes, ma'am.
speaking. And then, did you say you're going to be taking over Maple Lawn? Or
We're in
you did?
negotiations with the city to take on Maple Lawn as a preschool. Yes. So yeah, I'm working with Andy Gardner and the city and GAPS and just trying to figure all that out. We've been in 3 or 4 different conversations, but one of my sons went to Maple Lawn. It's near and dear to my heart. Bigger picture is it's one of the last destinations other than the YMCA where families with children with special needs
Yes.
have the ability to go there. It's suited for it. It has a great facility. There's promise there. It's in our city limits. Why not? So that'll be the 3rd preschool that we would be part of in the last 4.5 years. The goal is to have 10 in Lynn County, but 4 in Albany as soon as possible.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I understand, so this staff position is already on staff?
Yes, sir.
So it's just a matter of your costs are being covered by the.
Yeah, we're
city.
losing quite a bit of money, but I'm not going to turn those families down.
All right, so if you did not get any CDBG funding, what would happen?
I have a will to win. I'm just going to find another way. I mean, that's what I have to do. That's our community responsibility. So just like when I took the Y, it was a bankrupt organization, and now we're finding a way out of it because people realize what we're doing. We become relevant. So to me, the relevancy key for us is diving into that early learning child development and preschool market and infant toddler world if we can, getting our dual income families back into work. A lot of moms or dads are staying home as opposed to getting their job and their career offline. We got a lot of young families. And if we want to grow this community and bring in young families, they got to have a cheap and affordable place to bring their children. And oh, by the way, have an education system to back it. So that ELC, that acronym, that Early Learning Child Development Center acronym is super important. It's not a daycare, throw Johnny and Susie in the corner with a Barbie and some Legos. It's like, it's STEM oriented. And so it's important to us as a community. So we'll find a way. I mean, flag football, we'll have to pay for it. You know, we'll figure out a way to pay for it. Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Director.
Beth?
Right, so the next item on our agenda is to go back to the draft goals and actions for the Fair Housing Plan. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up PowerPoint with any luck. Well, that's not the luck I'm looking for. Okay, so I do believe I meant this to be in the agenda packet, but I'm gonna blame the ice and snow on some of the confusion and emphasis on getting all the applications in. This is the same information that was in last meeting's agenda, but more organized, and if I do say so myself, a little bit prettier, although evidently not as timely because I do have 2022 on there. So please overlook that one. So here's where we landed on draft impediments at the last meeting. We pulled these forward from our last plan, feeling like they're still pretty relevant to the city of Albany. And that doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. That's just where we were last meeting. So these can be changed, they can be added to, subtracted from, etc. So now I'm just gonna go through some of the impediments, and then you'll see what the city's actions were in the last plan, and then some example actions or related goals from other cities. So this lack of affordable housing, evaluate city-owned residential surplus property. That's still something that, in general, the planning department is planning to pursue as part of our housing implementation plan. Support infill and redevelopment projects, evaluate additional zoning and other incentives. So we have begun evaluating our zoning through the middle housing effort, but we'll continue to make some zoning amendments again through the HIP effort. Explore partnerships and opportunities, and allocate CDBG funds to affordable housing developments. Those are things that we had in our last plan. Some of those we can carry forward if we still feel like that's something that makes sense. But I also just want to give you guys a chance to read through the actions and goals that other cities came up with. We didn't actually in our last plan specify specific goals. We just identified the impediments and the actions. And so something to think about is, do we want to take some of these goals that are a little bit more specific and use that as a part of our format going forward? I think it kind of helps make sense of, here's our impediment, here's our goal, and here's our actions.
Like that.
Helps create some tracking, measure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think as you look at some of those actions in other plans, and the actions that we had in our own plans, is really making it clear what we're going to do and making it, where it's possible, measurable. So this was not an impediment we had in our plan previously, but lack of housing choice was something that I saw in other cities' plans. And that kind of relates to what types of housing are available and do they suit the population that lives in the city. And then the concentration of affordable housing. So our previous actions were conducting a buildable land inventory and housing needs analysis, which we have conducted that housing needs analysis. and then evaluate infill housing types and standards that may create new affordable housing opportunities. You can see some of the related goals and actions from other cities.
On our city website. So we've done these actions actually. The middle housing was really an infill housing type strategy, but the buildable lands inventory was done in 2019, and the housing needs analysis based on our land availability was adopted in 2020. And then last year and a half, we worked on the housing implementation plan, which is sort of the next phase of trying to figure out, here's what our data says we need. How can we try to address some of those needs? And so the community development block grant work kind of, while it's a separate program, a lot of what we're doing in planning can overlap with some of the goals and objectives of the CDBG program and getting them to align. So some of the work that isn't being funded because, well, we don't have enough money from HUD to do some of the, address some of the impediments that have been identified to fair housing choice. We're already doing some of that in our regular programming work. So, but these documents are online. We have a housing, maybe at the end we can pull up the webpage, but we have a whole lot of pages on housing.
And we're working to make our website even better. So hopefully that'll be down the line more easily found. So really also the identified actions help us see where we've been and what we can build on. And then those other actions that other cities have taken can help us also brainstorm where we can go or how we align that with our current existing work through the housing implementation plan, like Ann mentioned.
But a lot of other cities get a lot of money, and they get home dollars, and we don't get home dollars. So we're sort of challenged on the addressing the lack of affordable housing because we don't have money to build housing. So we have to look at all other tools in the toolbox besides funding.
Isn't that because of our our size of our population, some of that?
Well, when we hit 50,000, the amount of money that was available to us through HUD was too small. It needed to be a larger amount to also be eligible for home funding. So when Corvallis hit 50,000, they started receiving CDBG money about a decade or two before we did. And at the time, their amount was like $1 million in CDBG, and then they also qualified to get home dollars. But if you're under 500,000 or something like that, you don't get home dollars, which is kind of silly because you actually need the money, right? But bigger cities get millions of dollars to address. So home is the fund that helps build housing, and then the community development block grant, as you know, is able to serve a variety of different needs, but housing construction is not one of them. Or it's challenging to make it work. It has to be certain entities that can do that, but the city can't do it. So
at 466, we're getting close to that 500,000 threshold.
we've never been close. And I'm trying to remember if that was the cutoff number. I don't know what it is today. Well, what it means though is that we're eligible as a city to apply for the state's pot of home dollars that they receive, but we'd need a partnership with a organization, and we haven't had an organization come to us and go, hey, could you apply for the home dollars on our behalf? Because the state also has other funding sources available, and that hasn't happened, but it's something we certainly could do. So just one more minute, and we've got to work through this, but before we were a CDBG community, we were able to apply for the state's pot of CDBG money, and guess what? We can apply for millions of dollars, not, we're limited, but we have more flexibility in how we can spend the money, so.
So we also, in the last plan, had housing conditions and specifically lead-based paint. I kind of did a more overarching impediment here. That is something that has, we have monitored projects with lead-based paint. We make sure that Dev Northwest is following those procedures when they have homes that are of an age that lead-based paint would be a concern. So those are some of the actions that we've taken related to that. And then you can see some of the other actions that other cities have taken in terms of improving housing conditions and providing resources to renters, homeowners, and seniors. to make sure that they're in stable housing and that their housing is sufficient. So these were a couple impediments that our city had in the last plan, but we actually I didn't see examples of in the resources that I was looking at from other cities. So I don't have any examples here, but just to give you just that overview of what the actions were that were taken on those impediments in the last plan. Same with the discriminatory practices in the housing market. And then we didn't have this impediment in our last plan, but I did see this as a theme in some of the other cities' plans, and that's inequitable neighborhood investment. And so some cities had some goals around stabilizing neighborhoods that maybe were vulnerable to gentrification, or providing more investment into neighborhoods that haven't seen as much investment because maybe they're low income or just older. And so making sure that they are providing investment in places that haven't seen as much investment, so that those places have just as much opportunity and quality housing as any other area of a city. And again, we did not have this as an example, but lack of mobility, so people's ability to either move to neighborhoods that have more opportunities or be able to access those via transportation transit networks, so that they have access to the opportunities in areas that might have more opportunities. That is the end of the slideshow, but I'm happy to go back to any slides. I think for now, I'll go back to the draft impediments that we talked about last meeting, and kind of open it up for your guys' thoughts on either what impediments we want to stick with and thinking through what actions would be appropriate.
Also, they also apply as far as I'm concerned. They all still, these right here, they all still apply as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I do think that there's certainly data to support that these are still issues in Albany that we can continue to take action on.
And I would just say that there are a lot of impediments, but what can the city of Albany actually address, and what can the community development block program do, and what can the community development department do to address the impediments? And then that way we can actually show progress on whatever performance metrics we have, where again, because we're a smaller city, it's challenging to address some of the real issues that we have in our community, such as mobility, transportation choices, et cetera. But, have some meaningful, try to address some meaningful issues and make meaningful progress on those issues.
I do have a question. Thank you, Anna. The second one says concentration of affordable housing. Is that the right word? Is it the lack of housing, not the concentration?
So lack of affordable housing is definitely was a major theme. One of the other themes was that affordable housing tends to all be in one area. And so if that's not an area that gives people equal access to jobs or education or childcare, then they're kind of having to choose between being able to afford their home or where they live and their ability to, take advantage of opportunities.
I don't think I've ever seen a map of the concentration of affordable housing. Have you, Bess?
Well, I have, and we can provide that to you, but publicly supported housing units are mostly in the older areas and mostly in the center of town. We don't have any in North Albany. Oh, actually, we do have one in North Albany now, but I think maybe this one could be rephrased as, I lost it. I was just thinking that before you asked the question, but something like opportunity or housing choice, lack of housing choice and opportunity areas or something like that, where it's not focused on addressing the concentration of affordable housing, but just increasing the opportunities for housing choice throughout the city, right? But, it's all about what land is available that that nonprofits can afford to buy, getting the money and then doing the development. So we do have one in North Albany now, but historically, it was pretty much most of the affordable housing is kind of in the center of the city, between 34th and Pacific Boulevard and.
I would say too that in terms of not subsidized affordable housing, but housing that tends to be cheaper, it tends to be housing that's older, and areas of the city tend to get developed around the same time, right? So you have areas that have some of that, maybe older apartment complexes that are a little bit more affordable, and areas that are more newly developed, the apartments or homes in those areas tend to be more expensive. So it's not out of malice. It's just sort of this occurring pattern, right?
Yeah.
And so making sure that we just want to kind of whatever we can do to make sure that people have the choice of where they want to live, regardless of what their income is. I think is kind of the intent, right?
I just want to hear you under the definition of concentration, because to me it means let's congregate all the poor people over here,
right?
Over here.
Yeah.
I like the projects. We don't want.
And so I think it's just trying to be deliberate about how do we make sure we're not doing that, not that we really are doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's shown as an impediment, but I think we should just reword it personally to talk about lack of housing choices throughout the city or something like affordable housing choices.
Yeah.
Expand affordable housing opportunities throughout the community, like you
Right,
said.
right.
Yeah. And I think that there actually was a goal.
Yeah, I like that.
Where the third goal down, dedicate and grow resources for investment in affordable housing throughout the city. And so they kind of combine those two, lack of affordable housing and concentration of affordable housing, into one goal of we want to make sure that there's affordable housing. We want to develop more affordable housing, and we want it to be spread out.
Sorry, Commissioner Dean has her hand up.
Commissioner Dean, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. So I just really wanted to call out the one that talks about fair housing. That's a huge concerning gap within Albany. Is there are individuals living within shelter or housing that are unaware of their rights. There are people that are aware of their rights, but have people in positions of power that are taking advantage of them and struggle to access resources and support to navigate fair housing laws. And like sometimes what we see is by the time an individual gets access to a resource or support, they're already evicted, or if they're on unemployment while looking for work, can be told, hey, you're making too much to get this support. So that's a huge thing that is happening. I would assume everywhere, but where we have people in positions of power over vulnerable populations that are unaware of their rights, or while attempting to access support to fight for their rights, are losing housing and services. So lots of throwing hands up in the air because they're not able to access that support to help fight for themselves.
Thank you.
What I
I had
also
one-
heard, Emma, is that there's maybe discrimination happening in the housing market, and that was certainly an impediment that was up on the screen. And we would have to pay Fair Housing Council of Oregon to do some testing, and we pay them to do trainings. But I think that this impediment that you raised, the lack of understanding of fair housing laws and resources, we can work on compiling that information and helping with that, or working with agencies to make sure that they have the resources they need and are connected with legal aid or whatever it is, and with Fair Housing Council. But it's something that is constantly ongoing on both the tenant and on the landlord side, is making sure, especially the mom and pops that don't really know, you can't just pick whoever you want or not rent to them because they have a service dog or whatever the issue is. Just to remove those potential acts of discrimination within our housing market.
Yes, thank you.
I had one quick question. Kind of a common theme we're coming across is limited, resources. We don't have a lot to disperse. The part I didn't quite understand is you said that it sounded like Corvallis gets substantially more housing dollars. I missed the part on how, or essentially how could we get to that point?
We won't get to that point because the pie is only so big and more cities are becoming eligible for the same pot of money. And unless Congress provides more money and, I don't know that we'll ever get to over 500,000. I mean, we keep getting less and less money. CDBG funds. We will not get home dollars until we get more CDBG dollars, and our
There's nothing
chances.
we can do to try and increase those.
No, it's a really complicated formula that the federal government has based on your population, your poverty rates, and all sorts of different stuff. And they have to apply it nationally, right? And as more cities are hitting the 50,000 mark, so more cities become available and eligible to receive these funds. So, the pie is still this big. I mean, it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit based on whatever Congress decides to allocate to the program. But, it doesn't change enough to necessarily give the smaller cities more money.
So it's almost like who gets there first. I mean, since Corvallis was, I'm estimating, but I would seem our poverty rate is lower in Albany than would be in Corvallis.
Well, it was just that they hit 50,000 first. Now we actually get similar amounts of CDBG money. But in the beginning, they were one of the earlier cities. We've grown a lot and fast, but not early. This program's been around for decades and decades, right? So Chicago and Portland and Eugene and all the big cities have been getting millions of dollars for a long time. But Corvallis, when they became an entitlement city, there were fewer cities. So the slices of the pie were bigger. So that's why they got like $1 million back then in CDBG. And then they also got about $1 million in home dollars. And over the years, their dollars have been dropping as more people are getting a slice of the pie.
Not having access to the home dollars would not preclude us, though, from raising revenue through other sources such as fees, taxation.
Well, other cities are doing that, and those are some of the things we'll be looking at with the HIP implementation. So those policy questions. I mean, it's still, even if we were to, let's say, adopt a construction excise tax, which is one of the items we'd look at, it's going to take a long time before we even have probably $500,000 to give out. You know what I mean? So
right.
Yeah, but it is a way to do that. And one of the programs we do, the housing rehabilitation program, it's a revolving loan fund. So that's a program that money has started to revolve back, which allows that to continue to recycle in our community. So, I mean, in a perfect world over time, Denver Northwest would start getting enough money back that they wouldn't need to ask for money, so that then those dollars could go to something else. So Corvallis has been able to do some of those kind of programs where they've gotten money back and been able to recycle the money back out. But they actually have decided, and we don't need to talk about Corvallis, but they've decided not to get home dollars anymore. I mean, every program has a lot of red tape. So even though they're eligible for it, they chose to stop getting it a while back. Now, whether they're going to try to get it again now, I don't think they're eligible. So
Just a procedural question. I have to step out and take a business call if possible in about 2 minutes. I don't see the vice chair here. How does that work? Do we have to conclude or can we? Okay. I would like to nominate Commissioner Bailey to chair the meeting while I'm not present. Do we have to vote for that? Could I have a motion to approve that?
I would move to appoint Skylar Bailey as the vice chair for today.
Interim vice chair, yeah.
Interim vice chair.
I second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Okay, I'm gonna go step out now.
So I think from here, what I'd kind of like us to turn to is taking these draft impediments, and then it sounded like we felt like making goals would be a logical next step. So taking a look at these, I know that we're make some adjustments maybe to the concentration of affordable housing, particularly as it relates to being a goal. But let's think through what could be the actual goal that we want to link to these. So lack of affordable housing, I would presume that either that means creating or preserving affordable housing, but it can also be more specific, like I had shown one of the other cities, dedicating and growing resources for investment in affordable housing. That's a little bit more
Like waiving
specific.
FCCs would be something that'd be a discussion point.
Right. I think that will fall more into the action items.
Okay.
So let's start with goals and then we can think through what do we want our action items to be.
And so these are not just CDGB goals, right? I mean, these are.
Well, so Beth, are you wanting them to identify the goals today? Or should we, we could get some input, but I think if we get input, we can bring back the draft goals based on your input today. And also look at the reality of those being ones that we can actually measure and work on.
I would love to have a copy of this to play with, work through before we actually start doing that.
Absolutely.
This is the first time we're seeing this.
Yeah, I can provide this. So I can make some draft goals and bring those to the subsequent meeting. And I can also send this material out via email. And if you guys have input on draft goals, you're also welcome to send those my way.
But these are not just limited to what we can do with CDBG funds.
No, this is a requirement of the CDBG program, but it is not limited to only what we can do with the CDBG program. So we'll also be trying to align some of these actions with work that we're doing through other planning efforts.
I believe we're at, do we have any business from the public? Nothing emailed. Any business from the commission? Looks like our next meeting is scheduled for February 5th in council chambers. And if there's nothing else, I would like to move.
Can I just make a suggestion? Sorry. So between this meeting and your next meeting, we ask that you go back through the applications, the public service applications, and try to score those. One of the things that we talked about, Beth and I talked about, and probably should have done this a couple of years ago, is limiting the application requests to 25,000 or 10,000, 15,000, something like that. We always get more in requests than we have to fund. And in the past, when we've looked at scoring the applications and then awarding funding, sometimes it's been as a percentage of the funds. And we have some applicants that ask for more money than we think we're even going to have. And that's happened a couple of times. And it sort of puts, it just seems a little bit fair when you start having the discussion about how to allocate the money. We don't have to, we can talk about this at the allocation meeting, but just think about how you score them. And we're not at the stage of figuring out how much money you might award them. We sort of go through a complicated process so we can verify, and if somebody were to question, how come, I didn't get funding, or you got, whatever. So we go through a process which we can talk about, but if you could take time after hearing from the applicants, and also if you have any more questions, follow-up questions for you to fill out those sheets, that would be helpful, because the next meeting, you'll hear from the remaining applicants, and then we'll need you to focus on those. So while it's fresh, it would be a good idea if you can just think about how you might score the applicants you heard from today.
Unless I'm misunderstanding something, but the numbers that we got earlier, the 175,000 for public service and 289,000 for non-public service, when you add up those, we've got almost the exact amount applied for that we have.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, that would mean that I wouldn't have a job. So we have to cover some of our admin costs.
Oh, well, then we need the net number. We need from you, or I need from you.
So I can, when we get into the allocation discussion, I can bring out, hopefully we'll also know what we've got allocated to us this year sooner rather than later. Last year we got that number really late, but I can bring that all broken out. What's our 20% of admin, and then what's our 20% of our public service funds, and then what's our remainder or 15% for public service.
So we do know it's going to be about 50,000 for public services. So you can't look at the total two pots together. You really have to look at 170 whatever $1,000 in public services, and you're only going to have maybe between $50,000 and $55,000 to allocate. The other pot may have 220 or 40-ish thousand dollars. We don't know yet. So you're going to be able to award a lot more money or proportions of those grants in that pot because it's only a little bit higher than what we are anticipating we'll have available. We're not doing the allocation, but if you start scoring, that will help us when we get to the discussion about how to allocate the money. And we have to wait till we get the number from HUD. We're just going off of last year's allocation. We have no idea if it's going to go down or up, and it's been going down. So we might get $360-ish thousand total, and we
I would
and that's
anticipate less than that.
And then admin is 20% and public services can only be 15% of the total. So that's why we're thinking it's going to be somewhere around 50,000. It might drop down below. So the most competitive pot of money is your public services dollars, which is why when we get to talking about the allocation, we're going to cap everybody at a certain amount because, when you start thinking about percentages of how much you might award each, higher scoring applicants usually have been getting a higher percentage of what they've asked for, but there's such a disparity between asking for $2,000 and asking for 52,000 or whatever dollars. It just to bring some fairness to it. So,
Okay, but it sure helps from my end to know what we're looking at for a target.
Yeah. So about 50,000 for public services, and we'll have, we don't know, maybe around 220,000. We just don't know for the other pot. So once we know that number, hopefully sometimes we don't know till the very last minute. So we're just operating on an assumption, and then we make adjustments once we get that money. So it's a little frustrating, but.
So Ann and Beth, basically, we're putting the cart before the horse. We're getting all the information from the applicants without knowing what we're getting.
Right.
Didn't we get about 350 last year?
Yeah, so we're making
360. I think it was.
we're making an assumption that we'll get something close to what we had last year. We have to do this because we have to we have to publish our application. So first of all, if they give us the numbers within a certain deadline, we have to turn our plan in on May 15th, before May 15th. We have to hold a public hearing on that plan before May 15th for the city council. So you have to look at the council dates, and we have to have our plan published for 30 days before that public hearing. So we have to have the plan pretty much done by the end of March, and sometimes we don't get our number until the end of March. So it's a lot of work which is why we do the agency consultations. We try to start assessing what the needs are throughout the year, and then we do the application process, and it is crunch. We could try to roll the application process back out, but I mean, yes, the cart before the horse, but we know we're not going to get no money. It was a big drop, I think, last year, but we're just doing our best to move forward and meet our deadlines. We really can't wait until we know what our dollar amount is.
Yeah, because I was noticing, as Larry was saying, that the total of the asks are $513,895, and so if it weren't for the two big ones, we're within reason of being able to grant.
Well, you can't fund public service activities with dollars that aren't available to them. So that dollar amount is 15% of the total that we get. So if in simple math we got $400,000, which we won't get, we would have $60,000 available. So we've had like 53-ish or $4-ish thousand available the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So around 50,000, I think, is a good, benchmark for that. And then around 200, a little over 200, we might have that. We don't know.
And I will send out what we had last year, the breakdown of here's what our total award, here's what our admin was, public service, et cetera. And so you guys can use that as sort of a baseline, knowing that it's not certain.
Yeah.
So I'll send that out just to give you guys an idea.
That would help for me because I like to see it in front of me.
Sure.
I mean, I probably have it in my notes here, but I haven't found it. So thank you.
So if I'm understanding, the scoring then is we're just kind of ranking in priority of who we think should get
The
what
scoring,
money we, yeah.
the scoring should ideally reflect the quality of the application, the level of need we have for that project.
Right, strip, not thinking about.
And then
pool money
then
we
that
have.
will be then that will be used to kind of prioritize
Allocate the money
and
we do
allocate.
have. Okay.
So it's not specifically who do I want to have the money, but who based on the
I
applications.
didn't word that right.
Yeah, no,
You know what I
just
meant.
putting that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured, but
So question for you is, I'm looking at this graph or the table. How is Chance and Carver not, and I only know who this Family Connections, how are they not public service dollars?
do you ask how Family Connections is not public service?
Chance first, because.
Chance is applying for funding for a building rehab,
Okay, I see that. So they cannot use that money for services.
so it's not for direct service, no.
Okay, so same with Carver.
Mm-hmm.
And Dev Norris does rehabilitations and Family
Mhm.
Connections as well. Is going to build
Family Connections is using the funding to create jobs and support micro enterprise businesses.
Okay, we gave.
So it's an economic development
Okay.
project instead. Yeah.
So Beth we try to coach potential applicants to, if you can come up with a project that is something other than public services, that's where the money is available.
Okay.
Whether they can come up with a project that's eligible or that ends up penciling, it's been really challenging. This is the first year we've actually had a lot of applications for the non-public services dollars. So it is, and you have fewer public service applications than you might have otherwise, because they have gone and tried to identify other needs within their community besides case management or whatever their services that they provide that will help offset their costs and help them serve their clients.
So do they know which class of funds they're applying
Yep.
for?
Yeah, they did. And that's why you've got sort of two different groups, and we try to have all the public service presentations today because they're all competing for the same pot of money. And then the next time, those that are competing for the remainder will present.
And they sort themselves within those groups. We're not sorting them.
Well, we've worked with them and yeah.
And we've looked at what the applications are and made sure that they, that we know who's
In
applying
theory,
for what.
if they have a public service program that they want to fund, but they kind of know how this process works, and they're also doing some construction, they might adjust their own budget to fund the public service stuff internally and then ask for the money for the construction, knowing there's more available.
Yes,
Right.
when that works out. Sometimes
Yeah.
there are issues with the timeline, regulations, et cetera.
There are more regulations for anything other than public services. So those projects are often pretty challenging on the agencies. So we don't have to talk about that today, but yeah.
Fearless leaders coming back.
Oh. Wow. So we are meeting on February 5th in these chambers, and are they going to be a 2-hour time slot again, or?
It will probably be a longer meeting. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe to 1:30.
Okay, great. And so we'll see everybody on February 5th, and with that, the meeting is adjourned at 1:18 p.m.